Good morning and welcome to Deadline Press Agency's run-through of today's top stories. I'm Oliver Faramond.
I'm Michael McLeod, and let's go through the papers. Starting with the Times, wearing its poppy, of course, and they've got a moving picture here of the members of the UK Armed Forces who've been repatriated this week.
This is the main story in every paper today, really, and many of them have run sort of two-page spreads paying tribute to the soldiers who've lost their lives. And there's one picture in particular of the wife of Olaf Schmidt, who went to his funeral yesterday.
The Times have actually gone to great lengths to study the wife of Olaf and studied her medals. Turns out they're actually his medals that he won for all kinds of heroic things across the world, serving for the UK. Further in the paper, they've got a two-page spread on a talk that was given by the boss of Virgin Galactic, who's actually Scottish. His name's Will Whitehorn. The boss isn't Richard Branson, it's this Scottish guy, and he's actually hoping to bring it to Scotland. He's going to use the RAF base at Lossiemouth to launch these planes to space, which should be fun. But it's not cheap. It's $200,000. Can you afford that, Ollie?
I can't, but I'd really like to be in space. I think I could be the first moon correspondent. There's a few papers who've got on their front pages the stories apart from the repatriation, and one of them is the Daily Express, who I've just noticed here under their masthead are the voice of New Scotland. That's not something I've noticed before. And basically it's good news for the property market as house prices have risen and mortgage rates have been slashed.
And it looks like Scotland's going to do well out of this. An analyst says that Argyll and Bute, Dundee City and the Orkney Islands and Perth and Kinross will all have a rosy picture come February and March 2010. Turning to the Herald now, a paper pointing out that the post strike was cancelled last night and that now all our Christmas post is safe, but it will be back on next year.
The Postal Service starting work again is described as a period of calm after it was reported that public support for the strikes was failing as mail backlogs as high as 50 million items built up during the dispute.
And inside the paper's Highland correspondent David Ross has scooped a story about a 16-year-old schoolboy from Kinross who's become the youngest person ever to climb a mountain in the Himalayas called Ama Dablan.
Sir Edmund Hillary described the mountain as unclimbable, so it's quite an achievement. Callum McIntyre, who's a 6th year pupil at Kinross High School, was inspired by two family members' battle against cancer. He also raised £4,000 of his £5,000 target sum, so well done to him. Turning now to the Scotsman, and the other main story today, a US major on an army base in Texas killed 12 in a rampage. He was the counselling officer performing psychiatric duties for troops coming and going from battle, and he went mad and killed 12 and then was shot dead himself. And the Scotsman have made a bit of a mistake here on the headline. They said he killed 11, but in the first part it says he killed 12.
I suppose that just shows you the nature of breaking news and how quickly things can change when you're going to press. Yes, this was at Fort Hood, which is actually the world's biggest military base, and everyone there seems to be kind of scratching their heads wondering who this guy was and why he did this.
Moving deeper into the Scotsman, there's a story about Scotland's police forces. It's been reported that the Scottish police are whiter than ever, and as only 1 in 100 recruits were brought in from an ethnic minority background in 2008/9. Out of nearly 2,000 officers signed up under a recruitment drive that was backed strongly by the SNP, only 18 were from ethnic minorities, and you know that's a story when the numbers are measured in actual people rather than a percentage.
The Scotsmen are claiming that senior officers want to recruit more Muslims to help gather intelligence on Islamic extremists, but they're saying that robust policing after the airport attacks in Glasgow seem to have put people off. The Scottish Daily Mirror have dedicated their front page again to the repatriation of Olaf Schmidt, and they've got again this picture of his wife, who seems to be the definition of cool, surrounded by people in tears. Further inside the paper, they're following up on a story that was reported during the week that it's possible to buy a train journey for over £1,000 on the line from Cornwall to Scotland, and their reporter James Orr has actually gone and done it. His verdict is that it wasn't worth the money. He had to stand half the way, wasn't given a proper meal, and it just shows you really how things on the internet can get out of control if you're not careful.
It's a nice little picture feature, and they've got a little breakout of some stats here. He spotted 3 stags and a heron, he ate 6 sandwiches, drank 12 cups of coffee and travelled for 20 hours.
But the average speed on the journey was only 39 miles an hour. That says everything, I think.
Those same pictures of Olaf Schmidt's wife on the front of the Scottish Daily Mail. But inside there's a story that's on page 7 of quite a lot of newspapers today. It's It's some pupils who have to fly to school. They take off at 8:54 and they land at 8:56, and it's 2 islands north of Orkney, Papa Westray and Westray.
And it turns out that the Guinness Book of Records are looking into this, as it might be the world's shortest scheduled domestic flight, so record-breaking just to get to school.
In other aeroplane news, there was a terror for some Scottish tourists who were flying from Glasgow to Tenerife as their flight lost pressure, dropped 10,000 feet and then was struck by lightning. Things did turn out okay and the flight was diverted to Manchester Airport. The Daily Star of Scotland have that familiar layout. Katie Price is the splash today. Her and Pete are going to stay together over Christmas because Harvey's got swine flu. And the two little boxes on the side, Sharon Osbourne has had a go at Susan Boyle and said that she looked like a slapped arse.
It's definitely star by name, star by nature today, because this story is full of censorship, because Sharon Osbourne's outburst is just so foul-mouthed. I don't know what she's got against Susan Boyle. She does admit that she's got a bit of talent, but she goes on to say that she needs a razor. Elsewhere in the Star, they've taken the risky move of poking fun at their own readers with this story about a survey in which it's hard not to laugh. Some Scots have allegedly said that the evil Nazi leader Hitler was actually the coach of the Germany national football team.
This is a survey about Scottish children's knowledge of history, and it seems specifically World War II history. And among the claims about about Hitler are that he was an Estonian singer in last year's Eurovision Song Contest, and also that the Hitler's brutal private army, the SS, were Enid Blyton's Secret Seven.
Even though it is quite a grim news day, the Scottish Sun are looking on the bright side with a couple of Christmas stories, but it turns out they're not that bright after all. They found 10 families in Cambuslang near Glasgow who have been told to get out of their homes so that homeless people can move in. So they're, as the headline says, being made homeless to help the homeless just before Christmas. And a business story which has been turned into quite a good page lead here. It's the cheapest Christmas dinner with only 48 days to go. The Sun have got into the supermarkets and found that a 3-kilogram turkey just costs £6, and they can get cocktail sausages, mini quiches, for just £1 in Asda.
Brits spend about £10 billion at Christmas, and with the Sun trying to kick off a supermarket price war, hopefully we'll be able to spend a little bit less this year. The Daily Telegraph as well have Afghanistan as their main story today, with inside they have comments saying that Obama must stop dithering, otherwise Afghanistan will become like Vietnam, which is a comparison we're hearing more and more often at the moment. But there's a light-hearted story on page 3 in the Telegraph. Mickey Mouse is getting a computer game makeover. He's becoming a bit less wholesome, a bit more action-packed. And the photo of him here is he's waving his fists and he's sort of grimacing in a frightening way.
Yeah, this is the most iconic cartoon in history. He earns the estate of Disney around £5 billion a year in merchandising. And in this game, you can actually you can choose which incarnation of the wee mouse that you can get. You can change his character from being either helpful or selfish and cunning, in which case he grows more rat-like.
And this is an unexpected appearance of Mickey's dark side, which is occasionally mentioned, especially with reference to the first cartoon he was in, which is Plain Crazy in 1928, where after Minnie Mouse refused to kiss him, he forced himself on her.
Scotland's newspaper, as it proudly calls itself, the Daily Record, is giving everyone 2 free litres of milk this morning and a free Lego playmat. But the biggest splash in the paper today is on page 4 and 5. It's a classic piece of Daily Record court reporting. They got it at the start and they've saved it until the guilty plea as well. It's Stephen Carmichael has pled guilty to killing Charles Bowman.
Both groups of men, including Carmichael and Bowman, left the scene of an initial clash to go and get weapons, and then came back together and had an actual sword fight, after which Bowman dropped his sword and staggered towards a nearby church and collapsed. A bystander actually stopped to try and break up the fight, but the man who stopped them was stabbed 3 times in the face in front of his family. That was today's top stories in the Scottish press on Friday the 6th of November. I'm Oliver Faramond.
I'm Michael McLeod, and hopefully you'll join us on Monday for a roundup of next week's papers.